The year is 1950. In a smoky South Philadelphia pool hall, a 10-year-old boy steps onto a wooden crate, clears his throat, and unleashes a perfect Al Jolson impression that brings the hardened regulars to tears of laughter. That boy would grow. Up to trade verbal jabs with Tony Soprano and navigate the corrupt docks of Baltimore as horseface Pacuza on HBO's critically acclaimed series The Wire. But Charley Scalies wasn't your typical Hollywood success story. In fact, Hollywood was his second act, one that began when most are considering retirement. This is the story of a man who lived many lives before the cameras ever rolled. A Philadelphia original whose remarkable journey from pool hall performer to beloved character actor defied every convention of showbiz. And the lessons his life teaches us about persistence, reinvention, and finding your purpose no matter how long it takes. Charles Joseph Scalies Jr. entered the world on July 19, 1940, in the midst of a Philadelphia summer. The youngest of 3 children, young Charlie's first stage wasn't in some prestigious drama school. It was the floor above his father's pool hall, where the clack of billiard balls provided the soundtrack to his childhood. While other kids were playing stickball in the streets, Charlie was developing his comedic timing, entertaining his father's patrons with jokes and impressions that belied his young age. Those pool hall performances were more than just a child seeking attention. They were the first expressions of a natural performer finding his voice. South Philadelphia in the 1940s and 50s was a cultural melting pot, Italian, Irish, Jewish, and Black communities, creating a vibrant tapestry of American urban life. It was here, amidst the narrow streets and corner stores, that Charlie absorbed the characters, accents, and mannerisms that would later make his acting so authentic. In high school, Charlie and a friend formed a comedy duo that, in his own words, was patterned after Martin and Lewis, the legendary partnership of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis that dominated entertainment in the 1950s. The young comedians played every beef and beer joint we could find, Charlie would later recall with characteristic humility. While these modest venues were a far cry from the bright lights of Las Vegas where Martin and Lewis reigned supreme, they provided invaluable experience for a young man learning the craft of holding an audience's attention, a skill that would serve him well decades later. But unlike many aspiring entertainers who chased their dreams immediately after school, Charley Scalies took a different path. After graduating from St. Joseph's College, he stepped not onto a stage, but into a corporate office. Landing a position as Director of Sales and Contracts at Clifton Precision, a manufacturing company, Charlie entered the business world with the same dedication he'd shown to entertainment. Colleagues from this period would later describe him as meticulous, personable, and possessed of a remarkable ability to connect with people from all walks of life. In time, his business acumen led him to establish his own consulting firm, specializing in auditing and quality management systems. On paper, the story of Charley Scalies might have ended here, a successful businessman who once harbored dreams of show business before growing up and joining the corporate world. But the performance bug never truly left him. And unlike so many who resign themselves to wondering what if, Charley Scalies' story was just reaching its most unexpected chapter. In the early 1990s, with his children grown and his business established, most men in their 50s might look toward retirement, perhaps golf, or traveling with their spouse of nearly 3 decades. But Charley Scalies wasn't most men. Instead, he returned to the stage, this time in community and dinner theater productions across Pennsylvania. He didn't start small either. Charlie took on iconic roles: Nicely Nicely Johnson in Guys and Dolls, Billy Flynn in Chicago, and the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz. There was nothing amateur about Charlie's performances, recalls a director from the St. Francis Players in Springfield. He approached every role with the seriousness of a Broadway veteran. But more than that, he brought joy to the process, a refreshing lack of ego, combined with an absolute commitment to the craft. While many aspiring actors spend their 20s waiting tables between auditions, Charley Scalies was beginning his acting journey in his 50s, an age when Hollywood typically begins to write actors off, not discover them. Soon, Charlie began attending professional casting calls. His unique combination of natural talent, life experience, and authentic Philadelphia persona caught the attention of casting directors. In 1995, the doors to film began to open with small roles in Condition Red, the Al Pacino drama Two Bits, and Terry Gilliam's sci-fi masterpiece 12 Monkeys. These weren't starring roles, they were the small but essential character parts that give films texture and authenticity. But for a man who had spent decades in the corporate world, they represented something profound, a dream deferred but never abandoned. In 1996, Charley landed a small but pivotal role as a police officer on NBC's acclaimed drama homicide Life, on the Street. The show was produced by a journalist-turned-television creator named David Simon, a man who would later change the landscape of television with The Wire. Simon never forgot the authentic presence Charley brought to his scenes. It's a testament to the impression Charley made that years later, when Simon was casting for the second season of The Wire, he remembered the Philadelphia character actor who brought such natural gravity to his performances. In 2003, at the age of 63, when many actors find opportunities, dwindling Charley Scalies stepped into the role that would define his legacy. Thomas Horseface Pacusa, the devoted longshoreman in The Wire's exploration of Baltimore's decaying port system. Across all 12 episodes of the show's second season, Scalies embodied the complexity of a man caught between loyalty to his corrupt union boss and the harsh realities of a dying industry. His performance was never showy or sentimental. It carried the weathered authenticity of someone who understood working-class pride and compromise. As with all the other characters I've been blessed to portray, Horseface lives inside of me, Scalies would later reflect. I invite him out to play as needed. This statement reveals much about his approach to acting characters weren't constructs to him, but aspects of shared humanity he could access and express. The following year brought another iconic HBO opportunity when Scalies appeared in one of the Sopranos' most analyzed episodes, The Test Dream. As Coach Molinaro in Tony Soprano's haunting dreamscape, Scalies delivered a performance of harsh moral clarity, berating James Gandolfini's conflicted mob boss for taking the easy way out and wasting his potential. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew Scalies' story here was a man who had taken the harder, longer road to his own dreams, now embodying the conscience of television's most complex anti-hero. But to understand Charley Scalies fully, we must look beyond his filmography, to the life he built away from the cameras. Throughout his remarkable journey from pool hall entertainer to corporate executive to HBO character actor, one constant remained: his devotion to family. Married to his beloved Angeline for 62 remarkable years, Charley was father to 5 children: Chuck, Angeline, Tony, Christa, and Anne Marie, and grandfather to Charles IV, Christopher, Domenic, and Amelia. His family notes that his favorite audience was always seated around the dinner table, perhaps the most telling insight into a man who found his greatest fulfillment not in applause, but in the laughter and love of those closest to him. Even as he built his acting career, Charley never stopped creating. He wrote a screenplay titled It Takes Balls, inspired by his father's pool room, a loving tribute to the environment that shaped his earliest performances and understanding of human nature. Friends and colleagues consistently describe Charley with the same set of virtues: authenticity, humility, professionalism, and a genuine warmth that made every interaction memorable. In an industry often defined by ego and insecurity, he remained refreshingly grounded, perhaps, because success came to him after he had already built a full life away from the spotlight. When Charley Scalies passed away on Thursday, May 2, 2025, at age 84 after a long battle with Alzheimer's, he left behind more than just memorable performances. His life offers us profound lessons about patience, perseverance, and the courage to pursue passion at any age. In a culture obsessed with early success and prodigies, Charley's story reminds us that some talents ripen slowly, gaining depth and nuance with time and experience. His characters resonated because they were informed by decades of real living, of witnessing human nature across pool halls, corporate boardrooms, and family dinner tables. For young performers feeling the pressure of achieving success quickly, Charley's path offers liberating perspective. His best work came in his 60s and 70s, enriched by a lifetime of experiences that gave his performances their undeniable authenticity. And there's something especially fitting about Charley's most famous role coming on The Wire, a show dedicated to examining forgotten Americans and declining institutions. Like the longshoreman he portrayed, Charley represented a kind of American character increasingly rare in our culture: unpretentious, hardworking, community-oriented, and driven by deeper purpose rather than celebrity. The journey from that South Philadelphia pool hall to HBO sets spanned more than 6 decades. Along the way, Charles Joseph Scalies Jr. was many things: A child entertainer, a comedian, a businessman, a husband, a father, a grandfather, a hatsibar, community theater performer, and finally, a character actor whose distinctive presence enriched some of television's greatest achievements. We often celebrate artists who burn briefly but brightly. Charley Scalies shows us a different kind of creative life, one that smolders quietly for decades before finally, beautifully igniting. In our youth-obsessed culture, Charley Scalies reminds us that some stories take a lifetime to unfold, that second acts aren't just possible, but can be the most meaningful part of the journey, and that it's never too late to invite the characters living inside you out to play. For the boy above the pool hall who became Horseface and stood toe-to-toe. With Tony Soprano, time wasn't an obstacle. It was the essential ingredient that made his art and his life truly authentic. His favorite audience was always seated around the dinner table. Donations can be made in his memory to the Greater Pennsylvania chapter of the Alzheimer's Association or to the PCS Theater in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, helping ensure that other late-blooming talents find their spotlight no matter how long the journey takes.